I am legend. I'm not Robert Neville, I'm not Will Smith, but please keep my wife's name out your effing mouth. We're speaking about legends. And one legend that recently said adieu to his career was David Warner, the Australian opening left-handed batsman who has had countless memories over the past decade or so. He's won everything you can name: World Cups, Ashes, the ICC World Test Championships as well. You name it, he's done it, he's been there. To be or not to be? That is not the question, because the question is David Warner a legend of cricket? Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Sani-That sports guy, talking all things sport. And of course, today we're talking cricket, we're talking Australia, we're talking David Warner. But before we get onto David Warner, let's talk about the recent series, Australia versus Pakistan. I mean, was it a surprise? I don't think so. Pakistan always go to Australia with the hope of eventually winning a test series. Not many teams have actually won a test series down under. Pakistan are one of them, despite the talent that they have at their disposal. They've always had really good bowlers. We saw it this series as well. Amir Jamil, for example, amazing test series that he had. We didn't really see too much of Shaheen showing his exploits as why he's a premier fast bowler, but they had a good series in bowling. But as always, where does Pakistan cricket always let themselves down? That is the batting. Always is an issue for them. Yeah, fine, in the second test match, they could have won had they scored more runs. Inevitably, they didn't. I think the batting's what let them down again. One of their batsmen, who everyone always says to me is world-class, Babar Azam, I don't personally think he is. I think he has tendencies to show he's world-class, but this is where you show you have those world-class abilities. Only one team in the last decade has actually won a test series down under, and that is India. Why? Because they have the batsmen to do so. This is even when Kohli wasn't even batting for them, when he obviously went home to see the birth of his child. India have the batsmen to compete in Australia. Pakistan at the moment don't, and I think it's going to be a while before they do. It's disappointing because there was a lot of hope and aspiration for Pakistan to potentially even get a test under their belt. But another whitewash, another disappointing end, especially with an 8-wicket loss in the last test. Who knows when Pakistan will eventually win a test series down under. But of course, the talk will be about David Warner, the first Australian to ever feature in the first team in all formats without playing first-class cricket in 132 years, has finally bowed out of cricket. But what do we make of his career? It's one that has a lot of polarising aspects to it. We know about the sandpaper scandal that happened in 2018 in South Africa, where him, Bancroft and Smith all got axed. Eventually, Smith and Warner came back to the fold. We all know his incidents with Joe Root in the 2013 Champions Trophy, where not too far from here, actually, David Warner had an altercation with Joe Root. And then, of course, we know his on-field shenanigans as well, where some people like him and thinks they bring something different to the game, and then other people think it puts a taint on what is known as the gentleman's game. But let's talk about cricket. Let's talk about David Warner. Let's find out if he is as good as people think he is, or was his career overrated? If we start off from the bat, he's the only Aussie to feature in the top 10 for runs when it comes to Test, ODI, and T20. That is one hell of a feat, especially considering the amounts of talent that they have. Yes, it's understandable that T20 is a format that only came around 2007, so legends such as Steve Waugh, for example, Alan Border, may not be on there. But the fact that he's the only player to feature on there is a testament to his multi-format ability. Yes, there's players that are really good in Test, but it might not translate to the white ball form. Might be players that are amazing at the white ball game, but it might not necessarily translate to the Test format. But David Warner is an exception because he's the only Aussie to feature in the top 10 for runs, which is an outstanding achievement. Now, we all know David Warner made his mark in the T20 scene, and he also sits in the top 10 for the T20. Out of the top 10, he has the third best average and the fifth highest strike rate, showing that not only does he have the longevity, but he also has the potency in his T20 international career. This obviously translates to the IPL, where he's an absolute legend. I mean, if you guys out there that have been Hyderabad, for example, you'll know what it's like when you go there and you see the shirts and all you see is David Warner. You don't see legends of the Indian game there, but you see the legend that is David Warner. I say legend for me in the T20 game. He's definitely a legend. What he's achieved, even winning a World Cup for Australia, shows that he has amazing ability and achievement. Let's look at the ODI scene. We all know the World Cup's just finished. Australia, as we know, won their 6th crown. David Warner winning his 2nd. A lot of people were questioning whether David Warner should actually have been in the team, but he definitely showed his ability to still be a threat when it comes to batting in that tournament. But let's look at the World Cup in general. If we look at who's got the most amount of runs in the World Cup, we obviously know it's Sachin Tendulkar. but he played at 6 World Cups. David Warner sits sixth on the list of all-time World Cup runs with 1,527. But what's crazy is he only played 4 World Cups. Players above him either played 5 or 6, other than Rohit Sharma, that is, which goes to show that this guy is an absolute machine. Yes, he only sits 6th when it comes to the top 10 Aussie run scorers in the ODI scene, but he has the second highest average at 45.3, the highest strike rate, and he has the second most entries, which is even more astonishing considering the fact that out of the top 10, he's played the second least amount of ODIs. And there's a reason why I keep going about the white ball scene compared to test scene, because I think in the white ball format, he is an absolute amazing player. I don't think you're going to find many openers that have his stats and his pedigree and his achievements behind him. But in the test scene is where I think he lets himself down. When it comes to the test match scene, he actually has the highest strike rate of all of the top 10. Yes, his average may not be as high as a great opener such as Matthew Hayden, but only 3 players have scored more runs than David Warner ever since he made his debut. What's more interesting is the fact that in all of his test centuries, he's never actually had a strike rate below 52.5, showing that not only does he amass runs, but he amasses them at a rate of knots, which is always good in the modern day. If we look at his record away from home, it's not something to be admired, for he only averages 31.7 in tests outside of Australia. I understand it's difficult to play in India, where they're very spend-friendly tracks and test matches can end in maybe 3 or 4 days, but averaging 21.8 is not helpful, especially for a team like Australia, who've always wanted to win a series in India, especially after Ricky Ponting departed. And of course, we have to speak about England as well. The Ashes, averaging 26.5 in England is not good at all. Yes, the moving ball is not helpful in England, especially when you got Jimmy Anderson one end, and of course his arch nemesis Stuart Broad at the other. But you need an opener there to just put the innings to bed, put his foot in the ground and say, yes, I'm not losing my wickets today. Yes, you're not getting me out. And that's what I think he needed to do and help Australia eventually win a test series for the first time since 2001. I'm not saying he's the reason Australia haven't actually won a test series here, but if he had a higher average and had that opening partnerships, which meant that it was difficult for England to make headway into the Australian batting lineup, then I think they could have had more success. And I think that's one thing that he probably does regret in terms of his career when it comes to the test match scene, that he didn't actually win an Ashes in England. Regardless of what spin you put on it, he still achieved great things for Australia and had great memories as well, being one of the only Aussies to ever hit a triple century against Pakistan a couple of years ago. Yes, people will still point to what happened in 2018 with the sandpaper scandal, which was effectively ball tampering, but he still achieved great things, especially in the white ball format. And I think if you look at his career compared to other players, he will have a great resume, and I think that's what he needs to be remembered for. The good, the bad, the ugly, he definitely has that. But David Warner is still a modern day great when it comes to cricket. Of course, people, that's what I think when it comes to David Warner. But I'd love to know how you think David Warner fares against the other greats of the modern day, because that's how I see him. I see him as a modern day great. How do you see him? Do you think he's overrated? Do you think he's good, or do you think he's great? And of course, give me your thoughts on the Australia versus Pakistan Test Series. Do you think Pakistan will ever win a Test Series in Australia? And also, how do you think Australia will fare against the Windies in the upcoming Test Series? But as always, guys, thank you very much for watching, and until next time,